Hey everybody, what's up? JB here with Soccer Dad Pod. I am Zooming it today with my guest, and since all of you have electronic devices and have already read your screens, you know who that is, but I'm going to bring him on in just a little bit. In the meantime, I just want to again send a thank you out to all of you. You continue to listen, you continue to subscribe. For those of you that haven't subscribed yet, if you don't mind, just click that little button. It's free, it's easy. There's no fees associated with it. When you do that, the numbers go up so that whenever I do reach out to individuals like this, they're like, who are you? And I can say, look at all these subscribers. And they say, oh, of course, then we're it. So thank you for supporting the show. I want to do a quick just reminder on our previous episode, because we've really been running them out the door here lately. We had one of St. Louis's own. Actually, he's an East Sider. I'm going to give him more credit than just being a St. Louis, and he's an East Sider. Grew up over in the Bell Vegas, O'Fallon area. Mr. Joey Mayer. The Mayer family is you've heard the name. They just pump out player after player after player. Just a tremendous family. Had a great conversation with Joey, which is really good for you younger players. Because he just shoots it straight. He talks about the process, talks about the path, talks about what mattered to him, and was very honest about the reality and the timing of calling it quits and why. Just a tremendous episode. So this Hoosier All-American and Hoosier All-Conference multiple times, who ended his career at our beloved SLU Billikens, who was he was drafted, went through that whole process. He has a lot of insight. Go check it out if you haven't heard it already. In the meantime, the other thing is too, just a reminder for those of you, we're approaching middle of spring here, getting ready for June 15th. For a lot of you that are worried about that date from a college perspective and recruiting and all that other crazy stuff, if you as a player or you as a parent, you're still preparing to get your player ready for the communication process, to outreach to coaches, etc. We use it. We're a huge fan of it. And that is Choose It Right, the platform. It's in our show notes. Choose It Right. It's real simple. When you go to communicate with the college coach, you either have to do it all on your own, you format it all, put in all your data, do all your research, and that takes a lot of time. Choose It Right is a platform that allows you to format it all out, look super professional, get your highlight reels in there, get your picks in there, get your GPA in there, and more importantly, has a massive database that you can put your info in there as far as what kind of school are you looking for, what's the population, what region, what degree, what level of soccer, is it D1, D2, D3, and AIA, etc. And it funnels it all down into a list with names and emails that you can then outreach to. Because the reality is these coaches, it's harder and harder and harder for them to go and find players because of the volume of players that are out there and the chaos of the landscape. So cheat your way up the line a little bit, Choose It Right in the show notes. Without further ado, and I do need to mention real quickly here, you hear just my voice. This is a daytime recording. My partners in crime, Jared and Zach, they'll be back on the next episode, but they're out there paying some bills. So kudos to them, shout out. And without further ado, for the second time, I'm going to bring on one of just a U.S. soccer legend, National Soccer Hall of Famer, Chicagoan. He's a transplant from the other side of the pond as well, just with a tremendous resume. So thank you for joining us, Mr. Willy Roy. How are you doing, Willy?
Yeah, I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing awesome. It is a Wednesday in St. Louis, slightly overcast, not raining yet, but can't complain. We're in the middle of soccer season. What where do I find you at the time of this recording?
It's actually in my living room with my son Carson, making sure that I don't say any bad things. So I have before we actually get started, I just want to mention, when I heard of Pat McBride's passing, wonderful teammate that I had on the national team and also with the St. Louis Stars, a funny guy. He went way too soon.
Yeah, he was. He's one of those individuals that, we've been doing this for a long time now and lived here clearly longer. Everybody that has known Pat, met Pat, or just been in the presence of Pat are just kind of like, it's not enough to just say, oh, he was a good guy. Well, he was a great player. He had something special in him. And I just feel really, really privileged that we were able to talk to him and capture his voice and some of his stories. And hearing you just, lead off with that just kind of accentuates it. Let me just ask a quick follow-up, if you don't mind, if you have a Pat story, maybe on the road or a game or an experience that stands out, because our listener base would absolutely love to hear that.
The thing that really, when I joined the Stars, and Pat was really a funny dude, and the thing that he told me says he was the only one that always made money in church. And I said to myself, how the hell did you make money in church? He said he would go to church, put $1 in the basket, and take change for a 20. So I said, yeah. I said I might try that, but my church was a little bit too small. They didn't have enough cash in this. So anyway, I'm sure he was joking, but he came up with a lot of those funny stories.
Yeah, he's just a really, really special guy.
Yeah.
Obviously, the listeners are paying attention here. Willy Roy, U.S. Soccer National Hall of Famer. You got an accent there. And we know that when we do have individuals with accents on, our numbers go up, because for some reason it just kind of validates soccer. If our guest has a little bit of an accent, yours is not English, got a little German flair. Tell us a little bit about you were born in Germany. You came over here at 6. Talk about your family a little bit and why the move, and where did you land?
Well, actually, I was 13 when we came over, and usually, like in the older cities, like Chicago, New York, some of those cities, you had all the ethnic groups. The Germans were on the north side of Chicago, the Polish were more on the west side of Chicago, the Hispanics were also on the southwest side of Chicago. And what we did as kids, actually, I joined a German soccer club called the Wanderers and played in their junior and their first team. And then obviously, spoke a lot of German, didn't know how to speak English when I came in, still don't know how to speak English, but it's getting better.
Sounds good.
Even though I'm running out of time. And the fun thing is, I found out for people in those days to really respect soccer people, you had to have an accent. We now have a British influence, a lot of announcers that are announcing. So the basic American public probably thinks, man, these people know what the hell they're doing. So I actually went to school and took classes in German accent, and that has stuck with me till now. I guess it will never lose it.
Well, I was always confused as a kid, because obviously a kid here in the States, growing up in the late 70s, 80s, there was not a lot of soccer on the television, right? Other than soccer made in Germany. And I was always confused why it was British announcers for soccer made in Germany. So to your point, the British accent has always been prevalent, front row in our ears. Revis High School, I believe, if I'm reading this correctly, right, where you attended. I'm super intrigued with the little tidbit of information there. 146 pound state champ in wrestling. Is that correct?
Yeah. That was basically, actually, I did play football. I kicked and punted on the football team, ran a little bit of track, and wrestling was the big sport at the high school. The smaller high school, blue collar, but in my senior year, we won the state championship, went downstate with 5 guys, 4 guys ended up in the finals and won the state championship, and ended up wrestling at Illinois then in Champaign. Was lucky enough to make all Big Ten and an All-American as a sophomore. So that is my claim to fame that actually helped me physically as far as my soccer career is concerned.
Well, so that I didn't realize. During that, well, let me just ask you this: you had to have played. You mentioned it earlier. You played soccer as a kid within the the communities in the Chicagoland area. Was there a tug of war for you, just personally, as far as like from a fandom standpoint of which sport that you loved more, or was wrestling just come to you naturally? Because obviously your Wikipedia page, you've got a tremendous soccer career. So what was the relationship between the two sports in your day in, day out life in those late teen years into college?
I think, but excuse me,
No
I truly enjoyed all sports. Had a love for baseball, and as far as watching football games, tennis, anything at all that had to do with sports. But I think wrestling at the time, because when we got here, I basically started as a freshman, and it gave you part of a family. We didn't speak any English, my older brother and I. So every time you won one more match, it's like you were respected a little bit more. And it led to, eventually winning the big one in the state of Illinois. And in those days, as you know, they didn't have 1A, 2A, 3A. So if you won the state championship, you wrestled against everybody.
Yeah. So then where did soccer come into play at, that next level? If you're a state champion in any sport, let alone wrestling, you're a competitive individual. Soccer was, clearly you were good at it, technical at it, and able to play. When did it kind of rise to relevance or take priority in your athletic path?
Actually, we played on the weekend, so it didn't interfere with my wrestling at all, because most of the wrestling meets were done during the week itself, except for the state championship finals. And once I was offered a little spending money for playing soccer, I said, wow, this, it was kind of hard to get money from my parents. They didn't have any. And then suddenly, somebody put in $20 in your pocket, and you said to yourself, oh, I better keep this going. And that, it just progressed, till I started playing professional ball.
Okay. So, that's a little bit of a surreal path, because just being good and kind of casually playing within a local league to jumping to draft, being drafted and playing professional. Who were your coaches? Who were the ones that were advocating? Because we all need to know somebody, a lot of times in spite of talent, in order to move into those positions and those opportunities. Who was maybe your mentor or coach or, conduit to get you to that draft process to play pro?
Well, you know what? My situation was kind of unique. I happen to have a nose for scoring goals. I don't know till today whether I was a good player or a bad player. But the teams that I kind of joined, played for, we ended up winning, whether it was championships in Illinois and stuff like that. And as far as coaching is concerned, I thought coaches in my days when I was 15, 16 years old were dads that were there to pick up the dirty uniforms and wash them and make sure that we had clean uniforms the next game. And as far as their knowledge for coaching, the first coach that I actually could say that was a coach was in '67 when I started playing for the Chicago Spurs, an English fella. And there was, well, he had a title of a coach. I don't know, he didn't last very long, so I don't know how good of a coach he was.
So let's talk about the early days within the National Soccer League, and then obviously NPSL and NASL. When you got into the league with Chicago in particular, and you started traveling all over the country, you're clearly playing in bigger venues against names that are kind of global names. What did that mean to you? Kind of just as a young guy that was extremely successful as a wrestler, a collegiate wrestler. You've experienced success kind of at that state level and at the collegiate level, but now you're playing pro. You're getting paid. You're traveling the country. What was it like in the early days for you?
Well, I think, the biggest thing is the first practice session, actually, with the Chicago Spurs. And we had a German international, Szymaniak Horst, Joe Haverty played for Arsenal, an Irish national. We had an Italian national. And you know what? And you kind of compare yourself and see where you fit into. Are you good enough to be a teammate? Are you good enough to start? Are you good enough to come off the bench and stuff like that? And then suddenly you realize that you're actually competing with these people without really having had a coach. You know what? Maybe if I would have been a midfielder, initially it would have been different, or defender. But when you play forward, you want to have somebody. And I was marveled the Brazilian players that went to the beach, saw the ball bounce all over the place, but ended up putting them in the net during the heydays of Brazil when they won all the World Cups.
So during that time, who were some of the players maybe that, within the league? Because obviously you knew the names, you were a soccer fan. Who were some of the names that, as you lined up against, or maybe that were drafted or signed to your teams, who were the names that kind of inspired you or put you in maybe in awe for a minute, or one of those pinch yourself moments? Who were some of those individuals that gave you that experience?
Well, I think it wasn't so much the players that played in our league, but it was watching Pele playing with Santos, watching Eusebio playing for Portugal, watching all these really, really famous players that you could actually watch on television occasionally, not on a daily basis like you can watch players now. Mm-hmm. And those are the players that really kind of got you going. Most of the players in the NPSL, they were not the superstars or the big names as your teammates. Like Szymaniak, he was a defensive midfielder. He was not the one scoring goals, getting all the cheers and who knows what. So you compare yourself and see, I can do what he's doing and maybe a touch better.
So as a goal scorer, in those, maybe in the middle years of your pro years, when you were in Kansas City and then following that up here in St. Louis, as a goal scorer in the early days of the NASL, as these macro names are coming in, did you? I mean, I think I know the answer, but did you care really, or were you just more like, I'm going to put the ball in the net. I don't care who's the 10 or who's the 6, that's cute or has played in the World Cup. I have one goal. I have one job. I'm a 9. I'm going to go score goals. Was that kind of your mindset that kind of allowed you to have a prolonged career?
Well, you know what? I always looked at it that if I scored goals, the team has a great chance of winning games. And the hardest thing to find that I didn't realize, till late on in my life, it is really hard to find goal scorers. And everybody looks for them. Nowadays, they're looking for goal scorers. You watch the national teams and you see they all play a nice game of soccer. I'll talk about Germany just a second. When Gerd Müller or Klinsmann or Horst Rubesch, or Uwe Seeler way back, the real goal scorers. And then suddenly the last 2-3 years, Germany is looking to the second division for goal scorers, because what they do, they import, they go out and look for the best goal scorers for the teams, like Bayern Munich, Borussia Dortmund, and the same thing is being done in England. And it hurt the national programs actually in those countries, even though soccer on the club level was, as good as anything in the whole world. When you talked about Liverpool in the olden days of Man United, and you talked about Bayern Munich, and like I mentioned, Dortmund, and now you look, and most of the goal scorers are really not natives of the country.
Like, you know what? That's actually, I want to jump around a little bit, since you kind of dipped our toe in this, and I want to get your opinion, just kind of on the U.S. national team in particular. We're going to take a second, then we'll get back to the timeline here in a little bit. But clearly, there's an uproar in the national team camp with the recent results or lack thereof. But talking about a goal scorer, one of our beloved players that grew up right here in our backyard, that is thriving in England, playing at Norwich, is Josh Sargent. He's one of the highest leading goal scorers in that league. He continues to just net over and over and over again in an extremely difficult league to do so. But on the national team level, I think it's like 1 goal in 4 years. It's I don't have the exact numbers, but he's having a hard time doing it within the national team camp. I just want to get your thought on that, or your opinion, because you did it. You knew how to score goals, and you did it at all levels. When you look at what's going on currently, and you take a player like that, what do you think's really going on there? Because it's not like he doesn't have the skills, because he's exhibiting that in his quote day job, but it's not happening on the national team. Why is that, in your opinion?
Well, you know what? Goal scorers also need people. And, when I played for the Stars, it was Pat McBride, it was Al Trost. They kind of fed the ball to you. It came from Casey Frankovich. I guess we saw Pat in Kansas City at one of the reunions and stuff like that. So Pat was kind of funny again. He said, what was Casey Frankovich's game plan? And then, and I'm glad my son was there, because if he wasn't, I wouldn't be able to tell this story. He said, get the ball to Willy.
One job.
And basically, that was their job. And it was my job then to make sure that I finished. We talk a lot about, I watched the last U.S. game, Captain America, all these full-blown stories and stuff like that. And he plays in Italy now. And you know what? Why can't they give better service to a sergeant? Why can't they do something where they take on 2 people and dribble them and open up the forward, so the forward has a chance to score? There's way too much hype, name-wise, and not enough productivity, I think, from some of those players that they praise in the media like they're God's gift to the soccer world, and they're not.
I love this conversation, where we're going with this a little bit, because just today, MLS Next, which is obviously the quote premier highest level of youth academy in America right now, they just rolled out this new pilot program, is what they called it. And I just want to get your gut reaction, because this is literally brand new news, and it's basically called MLS Next. Well, the title of the post is MLS Next unveils groundbreaking quality of play rankings. And the thing that jumped out to me was one of the paragraphs within this flyer states that, quote, this pilot program also emphasizes nurturing young players' passion for soccer, irrespective of wins and losses. That kind of hit me a little bit weird, because it just feels as if, when we look at the top team, wins and losses are kind of a big deal. And we're avoiding wins right now. When you hear that and you tie it into what we were just, my question to you about the current national team and Josh Sargent, you pointed out, well, hey, Captain America, you need to be better. And then you think about your own experience and the strategy amongst your teammates that were like, look, we have one job. Willy's going to score. Let's get him the ball, right? The simplicity of that strategy. When you think about the through line of what I've just kind of discussed, what do you think about what we're trying to do or what they are trying to do as it pertains to finding a way to take really good kids, make them better players, and win games?
Well, you know what? Going back to goal scorers are born, they're not made. They must have that drive to go to the goal. They must have that, they must have the physical ability, the jumping ability. Either they're great at head balls or they're great at shooting from 20 yards. Or, there's got to be an end result for you as a player. If I'm playing defense, I want to make sure that I don't get beat. If I'm playing in midfield as an offensive midfield, I want to make sure that I give service, the best service possible to my forwards so they can succeed. And if I have wingers, I'm going to make sure that they're capable of dribbling people and opening up a number 9, a center forward. And I think the biggest thing when you mention this, we're going to have a new plan. You know what? A plan doesn't make forwards. Forwards need to play on the beach, not to know which way the ball is going to bounce, not in perfect conditions. I mean, I hear so many things. My son Carson, who runs a wonderful soccer program over here, and then occasionally I would go and stand and watch, and people don't know who I am now. And they say, well, you know what, the grass is a little bit high. Or the AstroTurf is a little bit bumpy. And I said, you should have seen me when I grew up, and we played in our chicken coop with all sorts of crap on the ground and make sure we didn't step in some of the stuff or, any kind of field, bumpy or whatever. Those are the things. A forward needs to be freewheeling. If you have a forward that is trained like a machine, he's not going to be a good forward. A defender should know what a forward is going to do the next step. And maybe the forward should know what he's going to do the next step.
Yeah, it feels a little bit like Rocky IV, right?
Right.
To mechanic. You saying you referencing showing up at Karsten's practices at the club and how quote, these people don't know who they don't know who I am. I have a really funny quick story for you, and then we'll keep moving here. But a good friend, well, I won't say his name till the end. We were at training for our own son's academy team, and there was a bunch of parents there, and they're looking at this elderly gentleman who's in a little bowler hat, and he was there every night watching the kids over by himself watching the training. Some of the dads about the third or fourth day are like, look at that nice grandpa, and he's over there supporting his kid. That's awesome. That's sweet. That's cute. And then I'm like, hey guys, do you know who that is? And they're like, no. I said, well, Google Gary Rensing. And it's one of those things where you talk about it. Your generation again are out there watching, and I love hearing your take on kind of the baked in excuses that a lot of parents are rolling out, whether it's the field or they're not getting enough minutes or they're not getting touches because it's just a different environment. So anyway, Gary, I'm sure Gary would like that to know that we're chatting. I'll let him know. He's a good guy.
Yeah, wonderful teammate as well. Yeah, no question. I enjoyed my stay in St. Louis. Initially, it was kind of goofy. Because when I got the phone call from Casey Frankovich, we need a forward, and I'll tell you what, the money that was being spent there, it was less than semi-professional. I'm sure Pat didn't give up his day job, and none of them, Steve Frank or Gene Geimer or, Carl Gentile or, so these are people, when I watch the MLS now, and Chicago has a player named Gutierrez, and I found out the guy's making $900,000 a year. And I said, boy, that guy's got to be scoring 30 goals a year. And you find out that is absolutely, mind-boggling. Our group, they didn't ask how much money you got paid for, whether you played for the Stars or the national team, whatever you got, and everything was good.
Well, let me peel another layer off of the whole St. Louis experience, because again, obviously, the majority of our listeners are from St. Louis, but those that are from other regions, they've heard us talk about it enough. They know that we have a lot of history and pedigree. Playing, being on a roster with a Pat McBride, with an Al Trost, et cetera, but more importantly, within the community of St. Louis, because as you well know, growing up in Chicago, and I lived in Chicago for probably 8-9 years myself. I know how the pockets work and where the players are, and the Bosnians in one neighborhood, Croatians in another. And I lived in Humboldt Park, so I was over with a lot of the Dominican community, in these pickup games. St. Louis, there's a reason soccer thrives here, and it does stem from the neighborhoods. It does stem from the Hill. In the Italian community, it stems from the South Side, and especially North County, with all the old the parishes and the CYC. But when you were here and you're playing with those guys, did you sense maybe there was a little something different within St. Louis? Forget about the pay, but just kind of the community, the way people supported it, the kind of players that were coming through, and frankly, the number of St. Louis players that were populated at all the other teams throughout the league as well. It was a little bit different. Did you notice that in real time? Did it matter to you, or am I just trying to get something out of you that you don't you don't see?
Well, you know what? It was no different in Chicago, like you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew, in the Open Cup, we would play against the Cooties. So we played against St. Louis teams in order to make it to the finals in the Open Cup. So, of course, the Keogh name, I was fortunate actually to meet, I'm going to ask Carson again how he's related to...
Is it Harry or Ty? Harry?
Ty. Yeah. Well, and that was at the coaching event at McCormick Place. I guess they had 7,000 new or regular soccer coaches that went to this clinic, and I happened to be lucky. I got a little award, which was kind of nice, that my grandchildren actually, saw that if you work at something or you love something, in order to be good, you really have to love something. It can't be something that mom did or dad did or my uncle played a little bit. And, so anyway, I felt comfortable because, if you look at the background of the names of some of the players, the only one that was maybe a little different was John Sewell, who eventually ended up taking over Casey Frankovich's job. And I could never understand that. Here we made it to the finals in my second year playing at St. Louis. And why would there be a coaching change?
Right. Yeah, it's incredible story. It's just a great pedigree and team. I want to maybe shift away from the club crest to the national team crests. You mentioned earlier that you and your family immigrated here whenever you were 13. You're trying to integrate into the Chicagoland community. You're getting into sports. You obviously you do the high school All-American thing as a wrestler, and then we've just talked about your soccer career. But during your soccer career, you also were invited and had the opportunity to represent your new country. What was that like when you got that call? When was it? What did it mean to you? Were you surprised? Were you expecting it? Did you know you were playing that well? What was that introduction into the national team for you?
Well, it kind of happened. We had tryouts actually. And the United States is kind of unique because of its size, and especially in those days, we, with the Hansa, played for the U.S. Open Cup, and we made it to the finals. And I was lucky enough to score goals against Bobby Gansler, one of my favorite defenders to play against. I shouldn't have said that, I guess.
No, there's plenty of people that know. It's all good.
And St. Louis, and then LA, and then the finals against the New York team. So you can, that's the only thing that the coaching staff would be able to see at the time. And then we had games where they had an all-star team from the Midwest. We went to New York, played against the New York All-Stars, which included Philadelphia, and against the West All-Stars. And I happened to be lucky and score goals, and that's how I got picked for the national team.
What did it mean to you, though, as a kid that came over here with his family? You're living in suburban Chicago, you're doing your thing, and you elevate to the point where your nation is asking you to wear their uniform, your uniform. What did it mean to you, just emotionally?
There's nothing. You know what? It's like a dream come true. Just being picked. I didn't even know whether I was going to play, start, or do whatever. Just to put on that jersey the first time, it was like, wow, that thing is going to heaven with me. There's nothing better than representing your country, no matter what sport it is. It should be done with pride and love.
So 20 caps, 9 goals. I'm kind of glancing over these here. A couple friendlies and then World Cup qualifying games, primarily in 70 and 74. You netted against, Israel a couple times, Canada a few times, Bermuda, Haiti, Mexico, I see on the list there. Pick one. What's the goal that you remember, and what was the situation?
You know what? I don't know whether I could pick one. It wasn't about me. It was really about the team all the time. I would have, if I would have kicked the ball from 20 yards and it would have hit a defender and they would have said it's an own goal, I said, great, super, we'll take it. It doesn't matter how you score, as long as it helps the team. And that was my whole thing. I know people made a lot out of it. When I scored that head ball goal at the Azteca Stadium, the first American to score a goal in the Azteca Stadium. Well, damn, the Azteca Stadium in those days was only like 2-3 years old. How many people had a chance to score, before that? And Mexico already had a real good professional system going. And then, as Pat probably told you and some of the other players, we would get phone calls. Are you in good shape? Yeah. We got a game coming up in 4 weeks against Honduras. You ready to go? Yeah, well, I got to check with my boss, see whether I can get off for a few days, that type of thing initially.
So that's hilarious. That's the German pragmatism that's probably never going to leave you, for you to say, well, the stadium was only open for 2 years, so who's played there already? I love it. Let's shift it up a little bit. Playing career. You ended your career, and kind of looking at the map and the calendar and the time frame. You didn't leave the game you loved. You ended up becoming a coach. I want to specifically ask you about your years and time at Northern Illinois. 2 questions. Number one, when you were leaving the game, did you know that you were wanted to be a coach? And number 2, you land kind of near home base, not too far from Chicago. Why Northern Illinois?
Well, you're being, I felt that I was blessed. My oldest son actually at that time was looking to go at colleges and stuff like that. So I went with him, visited a few schools, and I felt in those days, NIU, next to the University of Illinois, was probably the premier college in Illinois, the premier university in Illinois. And it just happened to be a coincidence. I got a phone call. I did a few... got involved in a few fundraisers as a spokesperson at NIU. And I got a phone call from the athletic director just before the college soccer season was supposed to start. He said, our coach quit. Can you help me find a soccer coach? So I said, Dr. Brigham, you know what, give me a couple of weeks. Let me see whether I can come up with something. Then couple days later, I get a phone call combined from my oldest son and Dr. Brigham. And my oldest son, Dad, you're not doing anything right now. Why don't you help us out this season? And that turned out to be 17 years.
So was your son playing there at the time as well?
No, he just signed up to play, and it turned out then later my twins, Marcus and Karsten, the next year, obviously, they came to Northern. And so, we had a pretty good program going, and the family ended up in the Athletic Hall of Fame, which to me was a highlight in my lifetime. Not that I was getting all the glory, but that my sons deservedly, got all the glory, for the good years that they had at NIU.
So let's talk a little bit about your coaching, maybe experience or your philosophy or strategy, whatever we want to call it. 17 years at one school, it's a long time. Obviously, it put you and your family in the Hall of Fame there. As a coach, having kind of the mindset that you've expressed earlier, just, from your own position as a player, as a goal scorer, having, quote, one job, what was your approach to coaching the other 10 players on the field? Is it German pragmatism? Was it more American athleticism? If you had to describe your coaching style, what kind of a coach were you?
Well, you know what? You have to look at the players that you have. And initially, the first year, obviously, I didn't recruit the players. They were there lacking a coach. And then you kind of look at the, material that you basically have, and then you try to do the best, with what the players are capable of playing. That, nobody can come and say, well, I used a 3-5-3, or I used a 4-4-2, and I used a 4-3-3, and you didn't have the player to play any one of those, situations. And you go, eventually, once I had a chance to recruit, and then especially after my twins graduated and Karsten became my assistant coach, he did a phenomenal job as far as recruiting is concerned. We didn't have the luxury that in Indiana had, where you can fly recruits in, show them their beautiful stadium. We kind of played on the cow pasture initially on the AstroTurf, and till I got things to change a little bit, a little more respect for the program from the school. And the other thing that was my total belief, I wasn't going to get the high, best players in the country. So I made sure that when they came to NIU, that they all graduated. And my thing was, if they didn't go to class, they didn't start. Mm-hmm. And I made sure that I knew some of the professors that the kids went to school, that they would let me know. And I'm very proud of that, because you know what? Very few players, as you know, make a living at being a pro.
Right. Well, let me take a second and ask you one of my favorite questions. This is a common theme, common question in many of these episodes. And you're in a unique position for me to pose it to you. Having played at the highest level against some of the world's greatest, and then coaching for 17 years. I want to ask you about the quote "it" factor. And what I mean by that is, whether it's during the recruiting process or within your own team, whenever a kid plays and you're watching, I'm looking for what the "it" is to you that might lie outside of the technical, tactical, physical, the usual descriptions of a player. What was something special that when you saw a player exhibit that thing, be it on the field or maybe even off the field, what was that "it" factor for you?
Well, I think what's important to me is meeting the parents. When you kind of look at the player, and dorm food doesn't do you a lot of good, as you probably know. Right. That unless you really watch what you're eating or things, you can balloon 15, 20 pounds, and suddenly you're not the same athlete that your mom and dad thought that you were. So I kind of watched whether the parents were kind of aggressive, pushing the kid, or letting the kid develop himself, which, was kind of important to me. And then, of course, the most important thing is whether they would be able to get a degree.
So 17 years, let's maybe pick a moment, something that really resonates for you from your coaching days. Was it a particular team? Was it a particular game? Was it a particular championship or a conference? If you had to go back to your days as coach at Northern, what was the one moment that just really stood out to you that is kind of that memory lock?
What I think when my sons were playing there, we were ranked in the Midwest region. And, St. Louis at the time, Indiana, I think Creighton, some of those schools, it was very tough to compete against them. When we won the conference tournament one year, it's not only that, we had our athletic director doing jumping jacks. So I thought the whole school and the reputation actually that the soccer program had within the school, not only athletic-wise, but also as community members, as good students, and good role models. I mean, those are the things that were important. I knew we were not going to win the World Cup, being at NIU. You kind of make the best out of the situation and say, okay, this is what we want to end up with. And the nice thing is when I got this coaching award, a few of the Northern players showed up. And to me, that speaks volumes,
Yeah, I love that. Let me kind of pick your brain a little bit on a little bit of the current state of the union when it comes to college soccer. Just see what your thoughts are there, because within college soccer, there's a million different things going on. One of the big areas pertains to kind of the procurement of players, where they're coming from, specifically international players, specifically the transfer portal. It's just creating a lot of chaos, and it's really deflating the next generation of younger players, high school players in particular, because they're looking at the landscape and they just don't really feel, a lot of them don't feel as if they have a place anymore within college soccer. That's on one end. On the other end of the spectrum, we've alluded to and we've touched on the struggles that are occurring at the national team level, and this constant exercise and trying to develop better players and find better goal scorers and all these things. It just seems like things are missing. How do you think the two of those things relate? Do you think the two of those things relate? Because it's really, really frustrating. Large percentage of the population that is, knee deep, neck deep in club soccer and looking at the next level.
Well, I think the loyalty factor is missing. You know what? And this is in all the sports at the collegiate level. You don't know what basketball player is going to play with which basketball team the next year. And the same thing, I asked Carson, it's kind of hard for me to follow things. I'm not a youngster anymore. But when I heard, Marshall is a soccer power now, who won the NCAA's? Connecticut?
Vermont.
Yeah. And you can, where the hell did that come from?
Yeah, they had so many fifth-year COVID players, and over 80% of the roster were international players. I think the number was like 93% of all the minutes played were played by non-U.S. players.
That's not a way to develop. You know what? College actually in football, when you think about it, in soccer should be the same. The development program that you say, we don't have to go any place. We're developing our own American players, and maybe the they should look at what we had in the NASL, where you had to start 4 American players, and make it the reverse. You can only have maybe 4 foreign players on your, on your team, or scholarship players. So anyway, you can figure that out, and that's how you develop. It doesn't do us any good if you have 20 players and 11 of them are from foreign countries, and the other 9 don't get a chance to play.
Yeah, it's definitely a catch-22 for sure. Let me ask you one kind of final area of question here. The passing of the baton. You've mentioned your son Carson a couple times, who I connected with you through. He's got his club. He's running his club, training the quote next gen of greats. Right? How fun is it for you to just kind of own that role of your dad, your grandpa? You're on the sidelines. You're watching your son now run this club, and all the new kids that are coming up through him. What does that mean to you that you've kind of accumulated a lifetime of a relationship and experience with the game that you've percolated down through your own children, and now indirectly to the club and the kids that he's coaching?
Well, I think the thing that as far as being on the field itself, he does most of the stuff with the players with a soccer ball. I've gone to places where they have 8-year-olds warming up for 20 minutes. And I said, geez, you got to be kidding me. Their muscles are so elastic, their ligaments, they need 30 seconds to warm up, because they're running all day long. They don't need all that wasted time. And what he does is most of the stuff is soccer orientated. And his coaching staff, he's got a couple of Argentinian people. They're also ball lover coaches. In other words, if you want to become a carpenter, well, maybe not now, but in the olden days, you had to learn how to use a hammer. The more you use it, the better you got with it, or with a saw. And now suddenly we have coaches. I don't know where the hell they're coming from, but they're trying to invent something. There must be something hidden under the table that we can come out with that's going to make us a better team. Well, that's BS. You have to do the day-by-day equipment and stuff like that. You have to learn how to play in rain. You have to learn how to play in snow. When we played, as long as we had a soccer ball, we didn't care what the weather was like, or things. So that's how you really become good. And Team Elmhurst, where Carson is coach, the director, actually, for me, it's a joy to see coaches that actually say, okay, this is the tool that you have. The tool cannot manage you. You have to manage the tool. And that's how you're going to get better.
Yeah, it's so funny that you describe it that way, because all my kids play. In the middle one the other day was talking to me about when we would train when we were younger. He's like, "What kind of gear did you guys use when you trained?" And I'm like, "Shirts and skins."
Yeah.
Just throw the stuff on the ground, go play.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if I were to take a group of kids, take them to a park and say, figure it out, like they would stare at me as if I was like a squirrel or a deer in headlights, right?
Yeah.
Hey, before we leave, I want to ask you just a couple fun questions. I'm going to take you back to your St. Louis days. You were here for a number of years. A little bit of a rapid fire. Quick, which would you prefer, an ice cold Budweiser or Busch?
Depends on what kind of Busch you're talking about.
Oh, there we go. That's the burbs there. Thin crust pizza. What'd you think of Provel? Were you an Emo's guy? Did you ever try it?
No.
Toasted ravioli. Did that ever cross your palate?
I've had them. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. When you did visit, or you bring your significant other or your family when you were in St. Louis area, where'd you go to eat? What was your favorite restaurant from that time?
Well, the Stars actually didn't pay me enough that I could afford to bring my wife along. So that left that. She was home with the kids, and you know what? Initially, not to change the subject, But it was kind of hard to be accepted there because you know what? I would fly to Dallas, meet the team at the airport, go to the game, play, fly back to Chicago. And initially I found out, oh, you know, you got it easy. We got to go to practice. We got to do this and, you know, and stuff like that. And it wasn't my choice. It was the financial arrangement that actually made that arrangement. And it turned out to be a wonderful time. The team became successful. Mike Winter, the goalie that I brought from Chicago, he did a nice job in goal for us. And then, you know, you mentioned Steve Frank, you mentioned Carl Gentile, Joe Pills, a former state from the old St. Louis Stars. He did a great job. John Su, I don't know how long he lasted as a coach, but I lost a lot of respect when he finally told me, you got to move to St. Louis. And I said, I would love to. Who's going to pay for my moving expense? And, you know, oh, well, we don't have the money. You know, so like I said,
Yeah.
Pat, I enjoyed the conversation with you. My play in St. Louis was fun, and I loved it. And I think it kind of rubs off, and all the teammates that I had, whether it was Altros, Gene Geimer, Steve Frank, all of them, you know, and that's why I still remember those names. It's a long time